This we're going to talk about how to cut a card, how to cut a piece of evidence, and this was supposed to be part of the research lecture. Maybe luckily or unluckily, there were some problems with that part of the lecture, so I cut it out, and now you get to see every window that I'm working with. So you'll see a little bit more of what's happening on the computer end of things. You'll see a little bit less of what's happening on my face, which are probably both good things for you. Alright, if you remember back to when we were talking about best evidence practices, we talked about a few things. One of them is having a complete citation. So I'm going to, or I think the first thing that you should do is create your citation. I would recommend that you use a file template. I'll be sharing this document template with all of you. I like using document templates because when everybody on the team or in your program is using the same file template, you can copy and paste things between them without having any concerns about formatting and looking. You can see up here I have this little app that if you're a Mac user, I would think about getting. It's called Get Plain Text. It does something that we're going to talk about, but I've disabled it for the purpose of this demonstration so that you can see why I'm talking about some of the techniques that I'm talking about. So first things first, we want to make sure that we have our citation available, our citation ready. That way, if something goes wrong with the computer, or we accidentally close a web page or something, we've got the citation available. We can always track down our work. The worst thing that you can do is cut a bunch of evidence from an article and then maybe have that program freeze up and you can't backtrack, or you forget to do it and you can't find the source of the article. One thing that's interesting about law reviews and law journals, they have this fancy citation that you can see here. I had to zoom in a bit so that you could see it. This is part of what we want to get into our source citation, because if you put this into a legal database, this citation right here, it'll pull up this exact article without any problems. So that's the first thing that we want to get in. And when we paste things into our template, we want to make sure that we don't just hit Control V, because as you can see here, you can see what that is. It pasted it here as 12-point font, which is not my preferred font. I like 10-point font. That's what's built in. You can see that that's already reset when I deleted it. If you go to Paste Special, however, which you can see I have built in here, you get some options. One of them is unformatted text. And when you paste something in unformatted text, it does just what it sounds like. It eliminates all the formatting and pastes into your document in the default formatting built into your template. So that means I can go copy something out of a web page and none of the formatting will come with it. So I'm sure you've experienced when copying from a web page, and actually we'll go ahead and open up a web page to make this happen. When you copy and paste from a web page, you get pictures and weird formatting and all that stuff. It's really annoying. I'm sure you've had the experience of your Microsoft Word like freezing up a bit, or oh man, that's unfortunate. Or creating other problems for you. So we're just going to open up an article real quick, select a bunch of text, show you the difference between pasting and pasting special, just so you get an idea of why I'm such a big advocate of pasting special. So we're going to select all of this text here. Let's just get up to there. I'm just going to grab this thing. And we paste it in. You can see not only does it take Microsoft Word a bit of time, but we get all this stuff, all in different formatting. It's added here a bunch of different formats to, or it often adds a bunch of formats to your template for you that you're asking for. Pain in the butt. So I'm going to take that out, paste special, and format text. Not only is it faster, but it gets rid of everything that you don't want, and all you have left is the essentials of what you want to copy and paste the text, or at least for the purpose of cutting evidence for debate. Okay, so that out of the way, let's get back to finishing building our citation. Let's back out here. It's going to be huge when we get down to the article. Let's see here. Okay, a little bit more manageable. So things that we need in a proper citation. And proper citation is something that's required by the NFL, quite possibly required by your local league or your state organization. So it's something that's important. We need the author's name. Oops, very special. I've gotten lazy about it because my text washing tool does it for me. We need the title of the article. You can see this created a little bit of fun for us. I'm going to show you how to avoid this whole backspace, space sort of thing. We have to skip down to second proper page of the article. Keep got some weird drag because of the video recording right now. So I'll go to publication, pasting quarterly review. We have the volume of the issue. And we have to go down to page 3 to get the date of publication. It is 2015. There's one more thing that I like to get when I'm putting together my citation, and that's the author qualifications. You go back up to the first page of the article, not the page with the information from High 99, but the actual first page of the article. You can see that next to the author's name there's an asterisk, and down in the footnotes it has the qualifications of the author. This is pretty common in academic writing, that you can find the author's qualifications, what their current job is, what positions they hold or have held, all that sort of stuff. Just right there in the document, so you don't have to go look it up. I'm not saying I like to do this because I'm a little bit compulsive with it, but I can do the same case format. You don't have to do that, obviously. Alright, so now that we have a complete citation, we can continue cutting the article without having to worry about losing track of this article or trying to figure out where it's from. And no matter how many pieces of evidence we generate from this article, we can just copy and paste the same citation over and over again. So we're going to pretend to cut a card because we're not reading this article right now. We're just going to skip down a little bit. And while we do that, I'm going to show you a couple of tricks of Microsoft Word. We're going to skip down to something that looks like it would actually be a card, but we don't really, doesn't really matter now. We're going to highlight this first paragraph in section 1B, I believe. You can see it's on the 7th page of the document, 6th page of the actual article. So we'll copy that, we're going to paste it into a Word document. You can see that what's happened here is it's inserted a hard return or a line break at the end of each line that was in the document. You can see here the first line enters the word model, and back in Microsoft Word, I haven't corrected for that to keep it all in the same line. I'm going to show you a trick that fixes that. If you highlight all this text, then go to Edit, find Advanced Finding Replace, you can put in the code for a hard return, which is *P, and replace it with space, which is what we were doing before, right? We were getting rid of hard returns with the backspace and then adding a space. So it's going to do that to replace all. It's going to ask us if it wants to search the remainder of the document. We want to say no, because if we say yes, it'll get rid of all the hard returns in the entire document. But that quickly gets rid of all of the information there, all the square spacing, which can save you a lot of time if you're cutting a bunch of parts from articles to do that sort of thing. It's a really common problem to have with PDF documents. So we're going to pretend to line down this part or underline the parts that we're going to read. Doesn't really matter what we do. Most people, when they underline parts of code, they'll do it like this, by highlighting the parts they want, and then hitting Control U and then going up and clicking the underline button. This is pretty inefficient. I'm going to show you a quick shortcut for that. I'm going to undo all of these real quick. If after you highlight your the first part of the wording that you want to underline, you hold down the Command button on a Mac or the Control button on PC, you can continue to underline parts of the document, single words, even single letters, full sentences, full lines, whatever it is that you want. Even just a single punctuation. And then you'll need to underline or Control U once. I know it seems like it's not going to save a lot of time, but if you're underlining a lot of evidence, this is one of those things that, the time savings goes up. It makes things a little bit easier on you. When we were talking about how to make a card, and how to cut some of the best evidence practices, we talked about not omitting any words or inserting ellipses into the text that we're using, but instead use minimization. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to highlight anything that we have not underlined, which is to say anything left in the piece of evidence that we don't plan to read when we're using this evidence in a speech. And then we're just going to shrink the text. I think I mentioned that my preferred text size for minimized text is size 6. I think when you print that out, it's pretty readable without needing great vision, and isn't so small that it makes you feel like a jerk to somebody else. I think it's also useful to indent your cards to make sure that it's easy to separate it visually, so that you know where your analysis begins and ends, and where the evidence is amongst your analysis. The last thing you need to do to make a proper piece of evidence is add a tagline. A tagline is the sentence that you've probably seen about a piece of evidence that summarizes what's in the evidence. Let's pretend that what we have here actually says something that's useful for us. And let's pretend that it says that the United States, let's say that it's about the United States organ donation rate. So pretty common tag that I've seen from younger or maybe less experienced readers is something like this. It's a tagline. It says U.S. organ donation rates. The problem with that kind of tagline is that you have to reread the evidence to know what the evidence says about U.S. organ donation rates, because the tagline isn't sufficient, it isn't descriptive enough. Just like with the process that we talked about for research and wanting to make sure that we can be as efficient as possible and do as little reading as possible, your tagline should aid in that effort similarly. So you want to make sure that your tagline is descriptive enough that you don't need to read the full piece of evidence to know what's in it. So let's say that that this piece of evidence talks about U.S. organ donation rates and that they are high, high because of public service advertisement campaigns. If we just add that little line to, or that partial line to the tag that we had, U.S. organ donation rates high because of PSA campaigns, then we don't need to read the full piece of evidence to know what it says. We can read that sentence and know whether we want to use that piece of evidence or when it's appropriate to use that piece of evidence. The more descriptive your tagline is, the less work you have to do down the line. It also makes it so that you can more easily exchange evidence amongst your teammates, or friends or whoever else you might be exchanging evidence with, without having to burden them tremendously to do a bunch of reading. So the questions you should ask yourself when writing a tagline are, does it include an indication of the warrant, or does it include an indication of the impact of the evidence? If it doesn't include those things, then your tagline is probably too short. Even though it might seem a little silly, I would encourage you to err towards having longer taglines, being overly descriptive, because the odds on you writing a tagline that's longer than the piece of evidence that you have is pretty slim. And the more complex the piece of evidence you have, the more complex the tagline should be, so that you don't have to read all of the evidence to figure out exactly what's in it. So that's how you create a piece of evidence, or a card, with proper formatting. Remember that the first thing you want to do is create a citation. That citation should include the author's name, the qualifications, the title of the publication, or the title of the article rather, the title of the publication, any publication information like the volume or issue, date of publication, and then any additional citation information that is provided. In this one, we have special citation formatting for law journals. It may be useful to include a URL, or we include the database that you found the evidence in. Anything that you can do to help somebody reproduce that piece of evidence, which is the whole goal. Because if anybody's looking at your evidence, you want to be able to be completely transparent and defend that your cutting of the evidence is wholly legitimate. And then when preparing the evidence, you underline in standard formatting parts you want to read, minimize the rest, and make sure that you have a proper descriptive tag on the top of it. We'll talk more about how to make the most of the template later on, but this should get you going on preparing evidence.